And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Kyle Kruse, who writes, "Hey, John. Longtime fan since the AMC days. Thank you so much, Kyle. I absolutely love Shang-Chi, and I'm incredibly excited to see it perform so well at the box office. My question is, how does Shang-Chi's success change the conversation around the Suicide Squad's box office disappointment? It seems like people are willing to go to theaters for the right movie, but this makes it seem like general audiences, unfortunately, just may not have been interested in seeing the Suicide Squad. Thanks, and have a great day." All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Kyle. And yeah, listen, as happy as I am about the success of Shang-Chi is equally how disappointed I am in the box office struggles, let's say, of Suicide Squad. Because I'll tell you what, I think both of these movies are fantastic. Like you heard me gushing about Suicide Squad the moment I came out. I went back to the theater to see it a couple more times. I adore this movie. I think it's fun and entertaining while at the same time having some beautiful anchors and true human emotionality and things like that. Like, it's a beautiful character movie all at the same time, all wrapped in the veneer of this bonkers R-rated blood fest, right? It's all of it. And I love this movie. I love James Gunn's Suicide Squad. I think it's fantastic. And the vast majority of people who came out of seeing Suicide Squad also thought it was pretty damn good. Like, this isn't one of those situations, Rob, where, you know, like, unfortunately, one of my all-time favorite movies, Man of Steel, it's not like Man of Steel where a bunch of people saw it, a bunch liked it, bunch didn't like it, some critics liked it, some critics didn't like it. You know, it's not one of those. The majority of the people, critics and audience who went to see Suicide Squad really enjoyed it. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. So why, with a movie as fantastic as Suicide Squad and a movie that's as great as Shang-Chi, why have their box office results come in and been so radically different? With the Suicide Squad's opening weekend of $26.2 million, whereas on the other hand, Shang-Chi made $75.5 million. I think Shang-Chi totally deserved this box office, but I also believe Suicide Squad deserved Shang-Chi's box office as well. I don't think it deserved the low 26.2. They're both comic book movies. You know, they're releasing kind of at roughly the same time, although to be fair, when Suicide Squad came out, it was still during that little bit of a lull in the pandemic where everything was going in the right direction, whereas Suicide Squad came out in a big spike. So that's there. So if we're going to talk about, you know, why did Suicide Squad not enjoy the same success, even though I would argue it is maybe, if not as good as Shang-Chi, it's on the same level. Personally, to me, all films subjective, you may feel differently, and that's fine. But I really like this movie. All right, well, there's three main things I think we need to look at when we're going to talk about why did Shang-Chi enjoy a certain level of success that Suicide Squad didn't. Why didn't Suicide Squad have that same level of success? We're going to start with one thing. R-rated. Suicide Squad is an R-rated film. Now, in as much as you can say R-rated films can be big box office successes, yes, but it's also a truism that it doesn't help. It doesn't help. You instantly limit certain audiences. Listen, maybe not you or your parents, but there are certainly parents out there who, once they see an R-rated label on a movie, they're not letting their kids go see it. Understand? So that kind of hurts it a little bit right there. Whereas Shang-Chi did not have, so, you know, R-rated, but, you know, Shang-Chi, not R-rated. So there's that. The second thing, which I think is a huge factor, is the HBO Max backstab. You know, Warner Brothers double-crossed and betrayed James Gunn and the people who made Suicide Squad by putting it out on HBO Max day and date. You can't ignore that. That is a huge elephant in the room. Whereas Shang-Chi, you know, got theaters only. Shang-Chi got a theaters only release. And so if we're going to go over and take a look at, you know, $26.2 million versus $75.5 million. Well, one was R-rated, one was not. And one got double-crossed by their own studio, and the other didn't. So those are two fairly big, significant things. There's a third one too, Rob, is that Suicide Squad had to deal with the baggage of the other Suicide Squad. Listen, the other Suicide Squad was a movie I enjoyed, Rob. I admit I enjoyed that movie. I had a good time with it. I know it's a hot mess of a movie. I do, but I still had fun. If you don't like that, tough. I had a good time with it. But a lot of people didn't like it, Rob. A lot of people did not like that first Suicide Squad movie, despite the fact that I did. And because a hell of a lot of people didn't like that first Suicide Squad movie, they see, oh, another Suicide Squad? No, thanks. I get it. I mean, I get it. Like, for me, it's a different reaction because I like the first Suicide Squad, but for a lot of people, they just know that they saw the first Suicide Squad and they didn't like it, so they see there's another one, so there's that. Whereas, Shang-Chi had, like, zero existing baggage. I mean, it also wasn't a well-known property. It also didn't have any stars and all that kind of stuff, but it didn't have any baggage that it had to carry over from a previous film. So, Rob, I think as completely disappointing as it is to me to look at this situation, because to me, these are two excellent films, two very different, but very entertaining, good time at the theaters kind of movies. And I think the big reason you're seeing one do like triple the business of the other, and then, Rob, look, I'm not saying these are the only things. I mean, obviously there's probably about a dozen other factors as well. But for me, if you're going to point to three main culprits, they got to be, one was R-rated where the other wasn't. One got betrayed by their own studio and slapped on streaming the same day they were in theaters, and the other one didn't. And the other one had to deal with the baggage of an unpopular previous film, whereas the other one pretty much had a clean slate. So now there are other factors as well. I personally, Rob, think those are the three main things at play here. Rob, when you look at the big difference between Shang-Chi, which now I think as of the end of the day is well over is over $100 million in North America now. But for its first opening weekend, 26 versus 75, what do you look at as being the main culprits behind that differential between them?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious one that we're not talking about is one's Marvel and one's not. You know, you have people that are the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, when I say this, I hope that the people that watch this understand that we as fans, genre fans, and what we love is not necessarily always in line with what the business is telling us. The business of Hollywood is frequently different than what we as fans want or like. And the fact is, for the most part, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the single most popular entertainment franchise that has ever been seen in Hollywood by a wide margin. Nothing comes close. James Bond doesn't come close. Star Wars doesn't come close. Harry Potter doesn't come close. Marvel is the king. And I think that people, even Black Widow, was an afterthought. You know, it came between Civil War and what came next. This was the first new Marvel Cinematic Universe and new character since Far From Home. And it was something we hadn't seen before. And I think for those who love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what we were delivered was top tier Marvel. And it was something that not only did it have, I mean, what's interesting is Shang-Chi is really not just the story of an Asian superhero, but the story of an Asian American superhero. And the reason I think it did so well at the domestic box office is because it is an American immigrant story. And it's a family story, you know, so everybody deals with their parents. And there's a lot in this film, I think that, and you know, it's been, some people have poo-pooed it as well. It's not like the Game of Death, James Bond superhero that Shang-Chi was in the comics in the 70s. That is very true. But I think that they've turned this into a film that has wide appeal. It's a 4-quadrant film. It's wildly entertaining. It delivers the goods. Half an hour into this movie, John, I was beaming. Now, that's not to say I wasn't having a lot of fun in Suicide Squad, because I was. but
Right.
my mom wouldn't have. You know, and if I was 8 or 9 or 10 and I was a Marvel fan and my mom took me to see Shang-Chi, my mom would have been like, that was a really good movie, Bobby. I would tell my friends. My mom wouldn't have said that about Suicide Squad. And I think that the Marvel magic, once again, now I know some fans, there's going to be a lot of people that can point to things and complain like I can't even say it, I don't want to spoil it. There's things in this movie that we've never seen in Marvel before, but that's why it's good. And I think Kevin Feige and Louis D'Esposito and Victoria Alonso and everyone else at Marvel, they knocked it out of the park again. And I think ultimately that's why it succeeded.
Yeah. And again, I just think it's unfortunate because I honestly feel like Suicide Squad knocked it out of the park for what it was.
I do too. I loved Suicide Squad, but you know what? I mean, that movie is full of all the great violence and great humor over the top. I mean, you've got a sex scene where they wreck a room in Suicide Squad.
Which is great, but I don't even think about that scene. I love that scene.
Yeah, but you can't take 8-year-old little Timmy to get the little, Mom, what are we doing?
That's the R rating aspect of it, right? I mean,
is that
hard
what
R.
people do when they're adults? Well, if they know what they're doing and they do it well, yes, Timmy. That's what they do. You wreck a room.
Well, yeah. Anyway, guys, question is for you. I personally think you got 2 great comic book movies. One really underperformed. One did exceptionally well. Why do you see there being the big differences between the two? Is it just the R rating factor? Is it the HBO factor? Is it the Marvel factor? Is it the had baggage factor? And there's probably, listen, Rob and I are just kind of basically just touching on the tip of this thing. There's probably like dozens of other smaller reasons as well. What do you think? Just the tip. This played just the tip. What do you guys think is the main culprits here? Jump on down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts.